talk about the power of connection, like connection with other people.
Yeah. Okay. Um, you want to start us off?
So the reason we're talking about this because I was watching a TED Talk, and it talked about that maybe things like addiction are not really an addiction per se, but more of like not having connection or bonding with other people.
Okay.
And that a lack of that leaves you just to be, they would say the most dangerous place for you to be is in your own mind, right? For
Yes.
long periods of time, especially. But just that addiction, like not necessarily to drugs, it can be, addiction to video games, pornography,
Shopping.
shopping, yeah. But being focused on those kind of things as like the center of your life is because a result of you not having connection with other people.
Yeah. And I think you made a when you were talking about the research that you were reading or the studies that they were
Mm-hmm.
making, um, and I think it made perfect sense regarding like if people are going through whatever the situation that they're going through that
Mm-hmm.
has like I don't know, caused stress or distress or even created some form of trauma,
Yeah.
and they don't have the supports that they need, and they're feeling isolated,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then they're going to look at how can I decrease some of this pain and
Right.
stress, right?
Right.
So then a lot of people will find things that they might enjoy or something like okay, so if we're talking about drugs, it's going to be something that can for the moment get rid of those thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, the thing is that even though for the moment it takes care of it, but once you're sober, the high is gone, those issues are still there.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing like with any other kind of addiction, right? Whatever you were trying to get away from or whatever you're trying to manage, well, you're not managing it because once you're done, let's say playing your video games
Mm-hmm.
or spending, going on a shopping spree or having sex with multiple people, that once that's done is that you're still left feeling unsatisfied
Mm-hmm.
or relieved.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think the relief would be if you connected with someone, right?
Yeah.
So the other way that it was kind of explained is that, and we talked about this, that if you were trying to make things balanced in your life, like financially, mentally, emotionally, that in the middle of all that would have to be some form of like spirituality, and not spirituality in terms of religion, but some kind of connection to people that that where you have an idea that something is bigger than you are and that you get to
Mm-hmm.
be a part of it. So whether it's like being active like in the community, like doing volunteer work, or finding a sense of purpose in what you do every day for work, like feeling like you're making a difference
Yeah.
to other people.
Or something that's going to be meaningful to you.
Right, right. But something definitely that you also consider to be a bigger kind of purpose than just you. So
Yeah.
outside of yourself. And I think like those kind of things also foster like connecting with people, like finding interest with people, like
Mm-hmm.
saying like, oh, you like that, I like this. Let's spend time together. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I also think like when you're saying like, find a cause or something that's bigger than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about that is like you have to put yourself out there, which means then you are going to have to connect to some people,
Right.
right? To get it
Yes.
started or be involved in whatever it is in the community or, you creating let's say they decide to create a cause, well, they
Mm-hmm.
have to interact with the
Other people.
community,
Mm-hmm.
other people to get the word out
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too that there's the other thing is that we're not only, I don't think like addiction only, but I feel like, well, I guess you could call it an addiction. We're so connected to our phones.
I know.
And it's like, then we're not actually making connections because we
Right.
think that we have, 1,000 likes or 100 likes or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And we have all these followers or all these people that we're following or whatever. and they're like superficial, right? Because you don't really know the person, or whoever you're following or that's following
Right.
you is just like, oh, I have friends. So sometimes people say, oh yeah, I have tons of people I communicate with. Well, do they really?
No.
So we're hiding behind.
I
Yeah.
was thinking like the not irritating to me because it doesn't affect me directly, but like whenever we go out somewhere, like we go out to eat or something, you will always see like couples, multiple couples, where they're both
Yeah.
on their phone. And it's like you went there because you were like, let's have date night or whatever, however
Yeah.
you ended up at the restaurant. But then as soon as they sit down, they like take out their phone. And so something that's supposed to be helping us communicate
Yes.
to each other is actually becoming like the barrier to
Yeah.
communicating.
And it's distancing you more. It was just an event you just showed up, but you didn't really do anything.
No, you didn't really connect with
Right.
anyone because you were on your phone.
Right. That is true, because we do see that a lot.
Uh-huh.
And I'm almost thinking back, like back in my relationship, did I do that? Like when we would go out, would I pick up my phone? I can't remember. Guess it doesn't matter.
I think like for some people and for me sometimes like I'm on call, and so then I don't have a choice. If the phone rings, I have to pick it up. But on a regular basis, I try like to move my phone to the side or like to not be on it, because I think like you are there to spend time
Right.
with someone.
Yeah.
Like if you can't spend time together, I feel like you're in two different like bubbles when you're on your phone, because you're looking at two different things and you're not communicating.
Yeah.
But I do think that contributes to people being like lonelier. And I remember talking to people, like even people that would come in and would be like clients, and their one thing is like they have no one to talk to, not to talk to like superficial, but like
Yeah.
this is how I really feel about, and so that was part of the stress in their life, is they had nowhere to like release those
Yeah.
feelings, like to say, hey, like if I tell you my feelings, can you help me carry them, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, or help me break them down and understand. So
Mhm.
like not a strong support system.
Right.
Because I think sometimes people say, oh, well, I have a support system, I have my parents, blah blah, but is it really the support system that you're
Mhm.
looking for, or is it support because they're your parents and they'll help you if you need to, but not someone that you feel close enough where you can tell them without feeling like you're burdening them, right? um, and I think, when we're trying to figure, even like I think it just overall, just with friendships or just even people at work now, like there's so many people that are remote.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we're trying to connect with our employees, right? Or
Right.
employers. And it's like very superficial. And they're
Mhm.
like, well, how are you doing? Well, I'm fine.
Mhm.
Like there's no interaction. There's
Right.
no building those relationships, because it's, again, it is online, right?
Through video.
Yeah, just DM me how you're feeling.
Yes. Yeah, I think that I think it's a problem for us. I think it's a problem like for society, and I think um like I remember growing up, and of course like every family has people that have some kind of addiction in there, and I remember growing up, and of course we didn't have like the cell phones and
Yeah.
stuff, but there was still kind of like the isolation, and we still were like, oh, you did something wrong, you're out, like
Yeah.
very that
Yeah.
kind of like we can't be around you because you're doing something wrong. And
Yeah, you're the black sheep. Get away.
Yes.
Get out.
Yeah. So I think like in this video I talked about more about like understanding people, and not that like if somebody was addicted, like let's say they're alcoholic or whatever, and like I don't feel like I have to support the habit, but I understand like the guy said, like sitting with them and saying like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm here for you if you want to talk, if you want to share anything, but doesn't mean that you go so far that you're now supporting the habit.
Right. Or being the enabler, providing
Yes.
them their habit, right? So when we're looking at like addicts, right? And addicts hanging out with addicts, they might feel like they're making connections, but they're really networking to see where they can score,
Right.
where they can, get a deal, or who they can rip off or whatever, right?
Right.
Whereas, when the person who's wanting to support them and they're getting that pushback, I can see how the bridges could be burned there,
Yeah.
because people I don't I wonder if people are less tolerable now than they were before, because again, we want people to be fixed just like that. Like, you can
Mhm.
it's a problem, and you can stop if you want, but you don't want,
Right.
right? And
That's not
I know
exactly
sometimes
true.
it's hard for people to understand that,
Mhm.
but yeah, the reality is, even like if we're depressed or we have anxiety, we can't just make it stop because you're telling me stop being depressed, be happy,
Right.
right? It's like, okay, thanks.
Or anything else is considered an illness, like diabetic. I can't yell at you into being non-diabetic anymore.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean? Like, there's a
yeah,
certain amount of understanding about, like, this is how it started, this is how it progressed, this is how you can manage it
yeah,
effectively. And so I think maybe that is one of the other problems, that people don't see any kind of addiction as an illness.
yeah.
They see it as a choice, a willingness.
Yes, like, you made the choice to do it in the first place, and
Right.
you're continuing to make that choice over and
Mm-hmm.
over. Therefore, it's an addiction,
Right.
right? And it's now interfering with everything, right? Whether some people are functioning addicts,
Uh-huh.
or they're not,
Right.
right? And those are the ones we see more so of, right? It's the ones that cannot function because they're either panhandling, they're on the streets, or
Mm-hmm.
you can tell, like, oh, they're on something,
Right.
right?
Right.
Versus the functioning one, they can, for the most part, can hide it very well, and you don't know, like, the person you're working with,
Right.
whether or not they're a functioning addict of whatever it is that can
That's
be,
very true.
right?
Yes.
I think it's sometimes it's hard for people to put themselves in the position of that person and try to not figure out, but to understand, like, what started it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I know, like, when working with the kids, it's like, oh, because I wanted to try it, right?
Right.
I wanted to see what it was like to be high or whatever. And none of the friends, right? When you're a teenager, nobody's gonna be like, don't try that. They're gonna be like, oh, it does this and it does this, and you don't remember
Mm-hmm.
anything. You forget about the world, blah blah blah. It's a good high. They don't try to tell you, don't ever do that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so some people are curious, like, I wonder what that does.
Mm-hmm.
Why not everybody, but why people are so drawn to certain things, right?
Yeah.
Why people are drawn to, like, wine or beer or hard
Mm-hmm.
liquor, or, certain drugs, marijuana or cigarettes or whatever, right? And for some, they'll continue, and others will be like, well, that's not my
Mm-hmm.
thing.
It is kind of because you mentioned cigarettes, it is kind of a hypocrisy that we're okay with that addiction. Like,
Mm-hmm.
smoking is an
Yeah,
addiction, and we're okay, and it can be done publicly, and nobody walks up to the cigarette smoker and is like, "You need to put that out," right?
I
And we
wish I
don't
could,
say, "I
because I
know."
can't stand the
You
smell.
wish you could, but you don't.
Yeah,
They
right.
don't get isolated in any way, in terms of, like, you can't have dinner with us because you're a cigarette smoker. Like, no
Yeah,
one says that to them. Or you can't come in my house because you're a cigarette smoker. They might say you can't smoke in my house, but they
right.
don't totally, like,
Shun you.
shun,
Yeah.
yeah, shun or shame. um yeah. And I think, like, for the other addictions, like pornography or shopping, I don't know about the gaming, but there's a certain amount of, like, secrecy. Well, I mean, with drug addiction too, but, like, to keep it a secret because you don't want anyone to find out
Yes.
that you're spending that much money, or that you are looking at pornography that much, or whatever it is. So then you keep the secret, and then in keeping the secret, you don't ask for help, or you don't tell anybody, like, I'm under so much stress, or I'm so depressed, or I'm so lonely that I need help with this thing that I've now
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to, um, like, couples, and
Mm-hmm.
when the one of the couples is seeking, like, gratification in other ways because they're not getting it one way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can see how that can spiral into something. Well,
Right.
whether it's pornography or drinking or going out,
Right.
or having multiple partners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like, what do you do, and how can that person feel that, how how can we be more open and trusting with our partner, or whoever's our the people that are around us, to be able to talk about that openly without feeling judged. Because I don't know, I would think that when people, if somebody came up, let's say somebody came up to you and said, hey, I'm a drug addict, I need some support. Well, I already know you won't be like, get away from me. But I'm just saying, like, like how, I don't know, because I feel like we think differently from your average person, right? Because of what we do. But I think, like, if I wasn't in that field, right, of helping people, I'm trying to see, like, could I put myself in that position where there's somebody who is, struggling with substances or some kind of addiction, right? And so, would I be open to helping them, or would I be like, not my problem, you got to go?
I think you're going to have a mixture of people. Because I've had, like, family members or friends call to say, like, what can I do if this person is doing A, B, or C? And then, and so then, like, pointing people in the right direction. I think the other thing that sometimes people do is they take that thing about, like, well, they're an adult, and if they wanted to do it, they could do it, and they're just not doing it. Like, you take that too far, because in a lot of situations, and even when I talk about, like, my situation, I was an adult in an abusive relationship, and I knew better, you know what I mean? But without help, then I wouldn't have been able to get out. And I think, like, you can be an adult and you can be in a bad situation, and we shouldn't just say, well, you're an adult and so you need to figure it out, because that makes people not want to talk about it.
Right.
That makes people not want to say, hey, I need some help. And so I think with all situations, when you made a bad decision, if you feel like there's no one in your group that can listen to what you have to say without being judgmental, you are going to continue to keep it a secret, and you're not going to be able to tell anybody.
And to, feel some form of relief from that lack of connection, you're going to connect to whatever your addiction is, right? Because there's that instant gratification, or that point where you can check out for a little bit and not have to worry about, not having people around you, or feeling lonely, or, whatever it is that had happened to you that it's hard to resolve.
Right. Yeah. I think the key is just figuring out how do we be, like, because we're not on the addiction side or the isolated side. Yeah. So how do we be more, I don't know, like, welcoming, or I don't know, like, how do you make sure that the people that you know and the people that you love know that you do so without judging them, or without, because I think it's both parts. I think, like, the person who has the problem has to ask for help. Very true. Yes. But I think that the people who want to help, or who are there that love them or care about them, also have to present themselves in a way where I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah.
And or shame you.
Yeah. I'm going to support you.
Right.
And try to understand you. I think that's the key, is try to give an attempt to understand the person and like what they're going through.
Right.
Which sometimes might be like, because sometimes people are like, well, it's stuff that happened in the past, and that's, I don't want to talk about that. Well, if that's what's causing this to kind of continue, then don't you want to, like, I just keep thinking the word in Spanish, but for whatever reason, my brain does not want to translate it into English.
I think we'll say it in Spanish.
Desahogarte.
Oh.
So, like, be able to process and take it off of yourself. You know what I mean? Like, stop holding on to it, like, release it.
Right.
So, but the person has to be able to trust that person enough to feel supported, one, right? And then the person should feel like, or they should have that conversation, is like, because sometimes, like, do your kids come to, or kiddo comes to you, or any person, like, hey, can I talk to you about something? Can I tell you something? But don't be mad, right? So they're preparing, like, how are you like,
right.
Well, it depends on what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes my kids would do that, like, I need to tell you something, but don't be mad. okay, well, tell me.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm like, all right, are you mad?
Yeah,
I'm
no.
like, no, you told me, so let's figure
Uh-huh.
out how you're gonna handle this.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I think like okay, like I told you, like my kid hit a pole with his car,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so he like was on his lunch break and so nervous. So then he called me and he's like, I did something stupid, that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, what? It's like I hit a pole with my car. I'm like, okay, are you okay? Yeah. Does your car still run? Yes. You can get home? Yes. Okay. But it was dumb. Like, okay, but it's okay. Like,
Like you're
yeah,
safe,
you're
no one's
safe. Like,
hurt.
no judgment. But I think the other thing that me and my kid have is we have like a history of me not overreacting to when
Mhm.
he says
Yeah,
something. And I think that that's the other thing. Like people keep in their mind the things that you say to them. So if you've ever like when I have overreacted, I've always apologized. Like that was wrong and I shouldn't have said that to you or I shouldn't have reacted that way. And here's what I really want to say to you, like those kind of things. But I think we keep in our head, and this goes back to what we tell ourselves,
yeah.
the worst interaction we had with that person. So
Oh
if
yeah.
like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like we're like, oh no, because last time I told them and they went off on me or they didn't talk to me for a week or whatever it is, like we bring that up and we forget about the times when they were understanding and caring and yeah.
Yeah. Which reminds me, like, that's so true because something happened with me at one of my jobs and it was something really serious. Instead of going to the person that I was supposed to, right? Like supervisor, whatever, I did not trust her to tell her
Uh-huh.
because of what she did once before,
Yes.
where she told my business or told someone else's
Mm-hmm.
business. Therefore, in my mind, it was like she is not to be trusted.
Right.
And the first thing I was like, I'm not telling her because then everybody at work will know,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Right.
then it's like, okay, I told someone who I didn't have a lot of interactions with, but I had enough where I knew that this person was going to be one supportive and that I felt like they would not go telling everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because when you were saying that, it reminded me like even people at work,
Yeah.
right? Not only like friends and family, but people at work, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you shared something with them and then the way they reacted, whether they judged you or made some kind of snide remark or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm going to remember that to make sure that I don't say those kind of
Uh-huh.
things around you.
Right. That's very true. It's very true. So I think I definitely think it's both sided. Like the person that has like the loss of connection has to make an effort to make a connection. And then the person they're trying to connect with just has to be open.
Yeah. So and let's take it a like let's do a like take it a step further,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it's really a step further or just bringing up a different situation. So like let's say regarding a breakup, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a loss, right? Let's just say a loss, and where people want to isolate,
Yes.
right? But you have all the support system, but they isolate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, people will say, hey, call me if you need me, but then they don't want to bother the person because their thing is, I don't want to burden them with this, with
Mm-hmm.
my depression or my
Right.
anxiety or my grief or my whatever, right? Separate from something that is like, I don't know, what we would call like
An
addiction
addiction.
versus like
But it's
your,
still a disconnect from everyone.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
one that is looking for the connection and one is wanting to stay away,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
disconnect from people because they're so, I don't know, immersed in their pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? That they want to just stay away from everybody.
So I think the thing about it is that or the thing I've learned is that when you are feeling something, and I don't mean like, I don't mean like, my grandmother died yesterday. I just want to be alone today. I
Yeah.
mean like when you have experienced something like a loss and you find that over time is causing you to do something or causing you not to do the things that you would normally do or not to talk to the people you would normally talk to on a
Mm-hmm.
regular basis or maybe not even go into work or maybe not even like eat or
Yeah.
shower, like things like that, then I think we have to know or our friends have to know like that's not normal and
Yeah.
that person needs help.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
regardless if that person's like wanting to distance themselves, we
Mhm.
know that, hey, this isn't the norm. I'm gonna go
I'm
and
gonna
check
go and
on
see
them.
them. Yeah.
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 Because we have a person, one of our friends, right?
Uh-huh.
So like her and I text every day, right?
Mhm.
And then there was one day she texted, but I happened to fall asleep early, like super early.
Uh-huh.
And she was like, this isn't normal. She usually responds right away. And so she checks my location. Sees where I'm at. She's like, okay, she's at home. She's safe. Okay, maybe she's sleeping. And so she starts going through all these different scenarios of what could
Right.
happen. Why am I not responding?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
then the next morning when I see it and I respond to her, she's like, "Oh, thank God," because I was thinking like, "What happened to you?" Right? So
Yes. Yes.
but I think that group, the group of friends that we have is like we can pick up when something's not
Mhm.
the norm for that person
Mhm.
and then reach out, or like, when like you've done before for me is like, okay, well, be ready at this time. I'm coming for you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though I'm like, I don't want to see nobody. I don't want to talk to nobody. I'm just like so immersed in this
Uh-huh.
grief or whatever. Right. That
Mhm.
I didn't even know what was the right thing for me
Mhm.
to do or what to do to manage all that. So
Mhm.
sometimes we do have to do that. And sometimes what's, I think also too, with someone who's addicted, maybe just, having that conversation, like, here's what you need to not need to do, because of course once you start telling what they have to do, they're going to do the opposite, right? It's
Mhm.
like,
When
if
you're
you're
ready.
if what yes, when you're ready, here's the things that we could do,
Right.
and this is what I can help you do,
Mhm.
right? And setting that expectation so that way they feel like, okay, well, I remember I had this conversation with so and so, and they said that when I was ready,
Mhm.
they would pick me up and take me to wherever I
Mhm.
need to get the help,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It reminds me, there was this one thing, and then I checked it out because it was on Instagram. But this guy talked about like every person, like if they're in crisis, they just need 8 minutes. If you can give them 8 minutes,
Oh,
you will help them like be in a better place by the
okay.
end of those 8 minutes. So him and his friend have this thing about like if if she calls, she will say, "Do you have 8 minutes?" And then he knows that she's in a really bad place. And
Okay.
so then he stops what he's doing and he listens to whatever she has to say. But I think that is also an important thing because people will call and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then we're like, "Oh, I'm busy. I'm at the grocery store." And then they're like, "Okay, I'll just call you back." But that could have been like their need for that 8 minutes.
Yes.
But then they don't want to burden you or they don't want to interrupt what you're doing. And so I think like they're trying to like connect, they're trying to like
Yeah.
reach out and connect. And sometimes we're too busy and sometimes we don't answer. And we do have lives. I'm not saying you have to pick up the phone and answer every time, but I'm saying like with those people that are close to you, like coming up with a way that they could like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good, to like, because I know that when someone who it's out of their norm to call me and I
Mm-hmm.
see that
At
coming up,
a certain time of day, and you're like, why are they calling me?
yeah, and then
Yes.
I'm like, let me get this,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yes.
Especially when it was my kids, because they knew like, hey, if you call me, it better be an emergency. Right? Don't call me to say, hey, what are we having for dinner? That's not an emergency.
No.
And so when they would call, I would like step out of a meeting or whatever I was
Mhm.
doing and be like, is everything okay?
Mm-hmm.
And if they tell me yes, I'll be like, is this an emergency? No, I did. Okay, let me call you back.
Yes. I always know. Like when you would call me, it'd be like 6 a.m. I'm like, oh, okay. I know. I gotta answer. So yeah. But I think like we do have those people that we know, like you said, you have to pick up.
Yeah.
But I also know there has to be, and I'm sure there's people in my family that go through a rough time and they just do it silently or by themselves. And I think it's important to let people know, like, every once in a while, like I will like text my nephew because I know like he goes through some stuff. And so I'm like, hey, like, I just wanted to let you know I love you and I'm here if you need anything, And he always texts me back, and I'm like, I'm good with that. But
Yeah. No, I I do know like there's certain people that pop in my head, like family or friends that will go through things silently, and
hmm
or if you say, "Hey, check on them," they're like, "No, everything's good."
right,
Because, for whatever reason, right?
right,
Um like they just want to deal with it on their own, or they want to
hmm
keep it private or whatever,
hmm
right? So sometimes, depending on who it is, you want to respect the privacy, or if you know that, hey, this isn't you, like, I know there's something going on.
right,
So
right.
either, talk to me about her, I'm gonna come over.
Yes, yeah. But that connection is so like we wouldn't even know to go over unless that person did it for us. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Or
Like
we have that kind of connection and relationship to know that, hey, this is what I feel like they're
hmm
they're gonna need, versus if I showed up they're gonna cuss me out,
hmm
you know
hmm
and sometimes people need that support and need that extra, like, even though they're not saying it,
but support is not telling them what to do. I think that's important to say because
yes.
supporting someone is not saying, okay, well, here's your problem, so here's your solution. That is not, just to be clear, that is not support. Uh,
As a mother, that sometimes
yes,
that would get blurred.
yes. It does get blurred and sometimes takes a lot of effort not to tell them what to do and to just listen and
Yes.
be like, oh, that sounds really stressful and things like that. Like, I'm sorry that it went that way, or I'm sorry that's how you feel. Like, what can I do for you? Um, but support, because people sometimes will say, oh, I supported them, I told them what to do. That's not support.
Yeah.
That's just you telling them what to do. And people don't like to be told what to do. But like, because I was thinking, like, whenever we went out to coffee, we solved nothing. Like, when I would come and get you, it wasn't about solving anything.
Right.
It was just about like
Being out and
being
being
out.
with someone that I could just feel like okay with, and be
Right.
like, okay. And if I decided I was gonna cry, you wouldn't be like, it's okay, here. I would be like, okay.
Okay.
And then we'd just sit there and, eat or whatever, drink, and it would
Yeah.
be fine.
But we solved nothing.
That's right.
We solved nothing. Support does not mean you solve the problem for
Right.
them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's just taking them helping them get out of that headspace, even if it's for a little bit.
Because if you don't help them do that, then that's why they want to get out of the headspace with whatever they become addicted to.
Yeah.
Right. Let me fix my, my thoughts by doing this other thing that is probably unhealthy.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
All right. Well,
some important topic.
Yes.
Yes. So stay off your phones when you're with people that you love.
Yes.
Or that want your attention.
Yes. Connect in person. I think we need more of that. In-person connection versus, just on the phone or social media or texting.
Yes.
Because our fingers get calluses when we're on there too long. So, even if it's today, reach out to somebody and say, hey, do you want to do coffee, or do you want to go out for dinner, or hey, you want to go with me to the park or to the gym?
Yes.
Right? So reach out to someone and let them know that you care and you're there to support them, whatever you feel is, whatever that connection is. And, maybe talk about this, like connecting.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time.